Tonight, your headlines from Philadelphia. Residents of UK have been left confused after mystery greenhouses appeared in fields overnight. There have been calls for van drivers to join the bus driver training programme after a nasty accident involving two vehicles happened on Park Street. And finally, the rich and famous from all over Philadelphia have been gathering in Atkinson for the opening of the brand new golf course. Stay tuned for more and hit that thumbs up to keep up with the latest. Hello everybody and welcome back to Philadelphia, where today we're going to be building ourselves a luxury golf course over on this hillside. Well, I say hillsides because it's going to be quite a big site. Over here, overlooking Atkinson, next to our Atkinson Dahlgreen Wines vineyard. And I think this is going to be a really super place for a golf course. The terrain is challenging here, so we may have to smooth a few things out, but we'll come on to that. But in particular, I want to shout out several of you for this idea, actually. There's been so many of you who've mentioned golf. But in particular, Xmas07, you were the first person to mention golf in Philadelphia, which actually got me originally thinking about this plan. But at that time, I was actually thinking I was going to be doing it over here on this hillside, as that was a little bit earlier on in Philadelphia. But then much more recently, Quinlan Roche, you have asked for a golf course twice now, in particular over on this hill. And also Martin, who are you? You came in very timely when we were talking about what we should do on these hillsides and suggested a golf course right here. So to all three of you, Xmas, Martin and Quinlan, really appreciate the suggestion. So we're going to be fulfilling that with a massive golf course over here. But just before we start that today, let's take a little look at a couple of things. In production, namely. So our monthly balance, for starters, has been diminished quite a lot, which I mentioned after we'd built Atkinson. We put in like the big water treatment plant, some of the other big services, which has really kind of killed our budget a little bit, but that's okay. We're still making 10 grand now. We're in the green. It's not too bad. Taxation as well, I would add, is still variable by industry, which I'm going to come on to now. 9% for commercial and office and 7% for residential. Could potentially raise that back up, but it's sitting pretty at the moment, so I'm quite happy with that. In terms of production though, you may remember we adjusted tax on vehicles to try and encourage them back into the city after they all decided to leave. And I can report good news in the fact that we do have some vehicle manufacturing back now, and actually it's at a much more reasonable level. So we're only using 0.4 tonnes a month of cars, which is a weird metric to count cars in, but there we go. And so we now have a 2.1 tonne excess, which is nowhere near as significant as it was before, but there's obviously car manufacturing happening now. I still do have to say though that timber, even though we've subsidised it, there's still none of that in the city, so goodness knows what's happening there. And we've still got a large deficit on things like clothes, food and beverages, which is just increasingly annoying. We haven't really come on to oil yet, so I'm not sort of super surprised that petrochemicals and chemicals are in a deficit, but everything else is looking not too bad. So I think we're going to leave those taxes like they are for now. So vehicles was a little bit higher than the others, but not too high. Timber is still subsidised, but it's not really making any great effect there. And we also actually increased the tax on steel and minerals, which hasn't had any impact on the production there. So all in all, I think you have to make some massive, major, significant adjustments to really see any effect, like what happened with the vehicle tax now. But it's good we've got it back, so we seem to have found a reasonable balance there. Right, onto the golf course. So I really do think that this is a perfect location for it. It's going to have really stunning views overlooking the lake. We've got this sort of rolling hillside, which I think will make for a challenging course, not one that I would participate in or do very well on, at least, but also beautiful. So I think it's kind of mostly going to be what I think golfers call a parkland course, where we're going to have quite a few trees around it. We're going to have lots of sand bunkers as our hazards. Probably a couple of man-made water feature pond hazards as well along the way, and we'll have a varying degree of kind of easier par 3 holes going right up to some par 5, probably par 5 plus, because I'm not a golfer, I will fully admit, before I start building out this golf course. So as always, if you have suggestions for improvements to what we do, please do let me know in the comments below. I am conscious that a lot of this hillside is very bumpy, so obviously that's going to make for a nice beautiful golf course, but there are certain things that I think we're going to have to just smooth out a little bit before we come on to actually do that. So I'm going to get the smoothing tool here because I want the main site to be up on a bit of a plateau in this area. So I'm just going to bring down the height of that ever so slightly so it's a little bit flatter to the land around it. So actually, let's just start by clearing out the trees like that. And now we can see what we're doing a little bit better when it comes to the surfaces here. So let's just make this a tiny bit smaller. I'm thinking we're going to grab a lower height, which is going to be around this. And this is going to form the basis of where our main clubhouse is going to be. And I'm going to put in a driving range. We're also going to make it kind of a bit like a posh golf club, country club type place where they are going to have other leisure facilities like a swimming pool, tennis courts and that sort of thing within it as well. That's the type of vibe I'd like to give with this, because I think the Atkinson family who are putting in this golf course, let's face it, because we're over in Atkinson here, and the Atkinson family is definitely becoming a Philadelphia dynasty, that's for sure. I'm going to say that they're a very wealthy family. They send their children to the Paul Raymond High School, and therefore this could almost be like an extension of an old traditional family home, is what I'm thinking, that overlooked their vineyard business in this direction too. Could potentially be part of the lore. Now this is still quite high up from where we've got this road in, so we're going to have a looping sort of road entrance to get up to this point. But then we also, I'm thinking hole 1 is probably going to be in this section here, so we want to start smoothing out some of that and see what that looks like. So we can make this a little bit lower, so it's dropped down from the main clubhouse around here, and we'll go around and kind of tidy that up as we go on, but that's just to sort of mark probably where we want that first hole to go. So before I do the road, I'm actually going to put in the main house, and for this we're going to be using the UK Pack 5-star country hotel because it's just perfect for this sort of thing. I was actually looking at a couple of golf courses in America as well, and they had sort of similar style of old, I'm tempted to call it colonial buildings, but I'm sure that's not the right term, as their main kind of feature houses and entrance points for this type of golf country club. So that's what we're going to be doing here. And I'm actually going to fuse it in together with a 3-star country hotel as well, or do we do the 2-star? Yeah, we're going to do the 2-star. There's not a huge amount of difference between them. They're all essentially the same building. But we're just going to join that in so that those walls run all the way along there. So we've almost got a second entrance. I'm thinking maybe one is the VIP entrance and the other is the every other regular person style entrance, something like that. Now, of course, there's a lot of work we need to do on this to actually merge them. So better bulldozer needs to come out here, and we're going to trim off some of these props. So definitely this hedge and this wall all the way around. So we're opening that up. We'll get rid of those pillars. Things like these benches don't look particularly good here, so I'm just going to trim them back. That one's okay there. We can merge these surfaces together in the detailing, but some of these little overlapping props will need to go. I quite like this as a little entrance back into a staff area potentially around here. We've got some trees obviously overlapping that we want to get rid of too. So yeah, there's a few things. I'm not going to go around and do this too extensively now, because I do know that as soon as I do any work around this asset, all of the work that I do there is likely to delete. So we're actually going to leave a lot of it, but we'll delete off those main things at least for the moment. So that gives us our kind of grand main country house entrance, and I've positioned it this way because the front of this is going to overlook the vineyard, and then you're going to have the skyline way off in the distance over here. So the main central business district is going to be round about there, right over the back of the vineyard, and the city's obviously going to stretch, or the downtown's going to stretch all the way across here too. So I think that that's a pretty cool view. You also get to see a little bit of the lake at the end there, although it looks very shady with the trees. And then of course we've got this direction over here, which is going to probably look out over the first hole, or the first and second holes at least. I'll probably lower this terrain down so you get a bit more of a view over Atkinson and out over Few Haven and Gaudy Bay there as well. And now let's come back and grab our road network. So this is obviously running along the bottom of the vineyard here. Now I am thinking that this road will divert on round here. Not that I'm necessarily planning on building out in this direction of the map. So if we do just take a look at it quickly, there is quite a lot of land out here with various islands like this peninsula here that could potentially be something. And of course we've also got this lake over here in this direction too, which has the river coming out of it, which is all very beautiful. So I want to keep the options open for smaller local roads other than the highway to reach that part of the map. That's why we're going to leave a little end to our road here, as if it could divert on around that part of the map. Now we also have this road that we want to join up, so I'm thinking we could actually, let's join that into the main road here. We could actually position the golf course entrance off of this. Let's come out straight a little bit. Now I'm going to get continuous slope on for this. And we want to be checking those grades. So that's 8.9. That's absolutely fine. If we start coming up this way, we can get a slope of 7.8 up to there. So all in all, that's actually not too steep at all. And my goodness, that continuous slope thing is just so good. I'm going to change this a little bit because I want to keep that surface flat at the top so we can have some nice car parks in there. So let's come back to this point and let's just go up to right on the edge of our flat area. Right about here. So that's a tiny bit steeper, but again, it's not so steep that it's unrealistic. And then from this, we can create some really nice luxury car park designs. But let's first and foremost, let's run this road around the outsides of the buildings here. Like that, and then we'll go straight into there, so it's all nice and straight and uniform and easy for us to play with. Yep, so that's now connected in and happy. So before I start putting in holes and the such like, I want to get a few more facilities up into this main building. So we're going to draw out the road this way just a little bit. I want to make sure I'm in the centre of that road there. Yes, there we go. So that's a nice crossroads there. And we're going to add in some commercial buildings into here because I think some of the low density EU ones suit quite nicely. So a building like this I think would look really nice. Let's turn off snapping to roads for a second. I think this would look really nice as a kind of staff facilities or offices, estate management, that sort of thing. I think this works quite well for that. So let's choose this smaller asset which has less fuss out front so we can add our own detailing in if we want to. So I think we'll go for that there. And then what we could do as well is actually fuse in a second one into the side of it. So let's actually just get rid of some of those props there. Let's hide them away around the back. Something like that. And we'll need to change the colours of those and trim off billboards. So we can absolutely do that. Let's get rid of the... I don't really mind the signs too much there. So we'll leave those little ones out the front. I definitely don't want leafy green signs all over our commercial asset. But we want to change the colours of these. So let's come into this one. I don't really mind this yellow too much actually. So we'll copy that whole colour set and then we're going to paste it into that building there. Just so that they match quite nicely. Yep, not opposed to that. Let's get rid of the burned bean thing here. Okay, let's get rid of the little picket signs as well. We may as well. And this can create quite a nice little office. We could do a sort of maintenance yard out the back here as well with maybe some of the park maintenance vehicles or something like that so that the groundskeepers could easily go out and drive around the course. And then in addition to that, I think we probably have one more building here. And this one could potentially fuse in quite nicely, maybe as a toilet block or something like that for... Or this could even be offices for guests that aren't using the country club, that are just simply coming in to use the driving range or the putting green or something like that. We're going to have all the facilities in here. We're going to go a bit nuts, I think. So let's also connect that up on the road there, and we can use some nice surfaces around there to create that into a bit of a courtyard. And of course we're going to want to bring this round to the front of this building too. So that one is now connected in. That gives us a sort of staff facilities area. I think we're going to have the main sort of bulk of the car park here. And then I do want to go out into the driving range at this point. So let's just create ourselves a little end here. And again, we're going to go back to... Actually, I think I might go to office units for this. If we take a look at small, low-density office units, I want something that's sort of long, that can act like a driving range main building. Definitely not 2 floors, definitely not too deep either. I'm kind of thinking this building is actually pretty perfect for it. So we can turn on snapping to roads again here. And perhaps we do even have 2 of those to act as the front to our driving range. And now I'm seeing it actually, I'm going to snap it in over this side instead. Because I feel like that's coming a little bit too far that way. Because one thing I'd really like with this golf course, as in where you see the big tournaments, I kind of want the final 18th hole to come up and finish somewhere out the back of the main country club building, so that spectators don't have too far to go to watch that final hole moment. So yeah, we'll have this shifted over slightly further this way to allow space for that hole to come in. In fact, we might even go just a tiny bit further. Then we've got space for car parks here, out here, and possibly even down this side as well. I'll probably keep this relatively clear, maybe some smaller car parks just along the front here, because like I said, I want to lower down some of this terrain around so that those views are maintained across the city. I just let the game run a little bit while I was getting my head in gear to do our driving range, and I've realised we have businesses in here already. It says not enough customers. I mean, it is quite far out, so hopefully they'll eventually stop complaining. I mean, that one has 0 out of 225 rented rooms. That's fair enough. This one has 5. So we have got 5 guests staying in here and 47 employees as well. I didn't realise they brought in that many employees, which is actually really good news because it means we should hopefully have quite a few people actually gathering in this area. We've already got someone with dogs on their way to either the shops or work. But there we go, we have businesses in our hotels providing lodging to the area. So we have a little bit of tourism at least, which I just thought was great. And it also increases well-being. I mean, there's no one really living within 500 metres, so, unless Atkinson is within 500 metres. Not too sure. Attractiveness and import costs. Now, I just had a little look at our finances and all of a sudden we're on 34,000 an hour, up from 10,000 not that long ago. And so a couple of low density commercials and level 1 offices or level 2 offices they might be, it's not going to be bringing in that much. So I can only put this down to these 2 hotels that we now have in, bringing in the extra $1. So anyway, that's good news. If you're struggling with finances, maybe plop one of these. And also, we've hit 10 million. Finally, I didn't notice when it happened because I was too busy, but there we go. We've made it to 10 million in the bank. But anyway, let's get on with this driving range. Now, of course, throughout this build, we're going to be using an awful lot of surfaces for this. Now, I have got Sully's manicured grass surfaces in here, so we may use some of these. We've also got some of the vanilla ones here too. So we're going to use a combination of them. And I'm actually thinking for the golf courses, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do the rough as this grass surface, because that one's slightly darker. And then we're going to have the fairway using Sully's grass surface, which is just that little bit more manicured and nice, I think. And then we're going to use this one, which is super light, for the actual greens themselves. Now, I can't decide if it's maybe a bit too light, so it may be that we do actually use this one to make it look a little bit more manicured, or maybe even a stripy one potentially. I'm thinking the squares are probably nicer, but I don't think it stands out enough from the actual fairway itself. That is why I'm thinking I'm probably going to go for the lighter green so that it has that sort of extra manicured grass texture. So that's what we're going to be using for the holes at least. So I'm thinking for the driving range, we're going to go for the same grass as the fairway essentially. But what I do want to do here, now obviously we don't have any doors out of this side. Now we do have our industrial doors, which I'm not too sure if it gives off quite the right vibe, but this is what we're going to use for it. So the question really is, which ones do we use? We want the medium-sized ones obviously to fit onto this wall here. They all just feel way too industrial. So I may go onto the workshop and see if I can find some other door decal assets. If anyone has any suggestions, let me know. But for the moment, I think we're going to use these, and it can kind of be a case of they open it up when people want to come out into the driving range, or when the driving range is actually open. For the moment, that'll do. And then outside the back of that, I do want to create a kind of shaded, covered area where people can tee off from, essentially. So I think I'm probably going to use this cobble natural stone from El Galendo. I think that's a good one to use. And then we're going to come in and we're going to create a sort of a passageway for people, but then also tee boxes. So areas like this. And hopefully we can line this up reasonably well, where people can kind of tee off from. So something like that, and then we can add little tee boxes into these spaces. So something along those lines. Then we can go ahead and add in the driving range area. So I'm thinking we'll come pretty much out to here. Wondering where we've got the flat area too. It's very hard to judge distances. sometimes within City Skylines. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe that's probably not far enough. Golfers in the audience, please do let me know. But I think in terms of the size and the scale of the golf club that we're actually building here, I think that this is going to do quite nicely and fit in with everything that we're going to be putting around it, at least too. So if we bring that in here, it's not perfectly even, but it's not too bad. And then we complete that. We have got the driving range area, like so. Now, of course, what I do want to do is go ahead and add a big fence at the back. So I think we're going to use that fence from the Japanese asset pack. You probably know the one I'm thinking of because it appears on random assets and looks absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, here we go. The school props ball fence. This is the one we want. So we're going to use this to surround much of the driving range. Something like that. It was then occurring to me that actually in a driving range you probably wouldn't need to have super manicured grass. I guess you want to see where your ball is, but it wouldn't really matter too much if it's rough because you're not hitting the ball in this actual space. And now I'm looking at it, I'm definitely thinking it's probably not big enough. But we need to make sure we can fit our other holes in, so I think the effect of what it is there, so we'll leave it like that. And I'm going to use this little fence asset to mark out some of the markers, like in terms of the distances, which is going to be a little bit tricky to do perfectly by eye. So we're going to kind of mark out the middle section first. So we're just going to go back in increments like this. That's probably actually too close together, so we'll get rid of the middle one there and we'll spread it out a little bit further. Try and get these as even as we possibly can. Something along those lines, and I think I'm going to find a sign of some description with some numbers or something hopefully like that on, and we'll put those out as well just to indicate those little distance signs for the people teeing off here. Now I do want to do some work on the driving range front, but we'll come back to that in the detailing time lapse because I just really wanted to get the main kind of view of that in for the time being. And we're also going to come back and do some work on the leisure facilities out here, like adding tennis courts, the car parks, the swimming pool perhaps as well. But I do want to now get onto the actual golf course and the holes themselves. So I'm actually going to start with the 18th hole, which I know is a weird thing, but like I said, I kind of want this to end up somewhere close to the clubhouse. So I think with that, we need to put this in first before we put in the first hole, just so we make sure that we've got space for it, because it needs to be a kind of grand exhibit, essentially. So I'm going to put in the green to start off with. So I think we're going to use the grass 0001, as I mentioned, which is the bright kind of green finishing area. And we're going to have this here, and I'm going to have this whole bend. So I'm hoping it would be what golfers would consider a par 5, is what I'd say for this. And we're going to start putting it in round about here. I kind of struggle with surfaces sometimes in terms of getting smooth curves and that sort of thing in, so I'm actually going to use some paths to mark out where we want the green to be, and then we can add the surfaces nice and smoothly in around it. But I'm thinking probably something actually fairly large for this. So we're going to go for a sort of semi-oval shape. We see again, I haven't got that quite right. So let's just adjust this a little bit. That's a little bit smoother on that side, and that's not too bad. And then we can come in with our surfaces and, of course, area bucket that we love so much. And we can just place in the green like that. And then we can come through and delete the path that we no longer need around the outside. So that's going to be where the green is situated for this final hole. And that is quite big, I just realised, but I think for the final hole, that's probably needed to have a nice grand finishing green that people can really gather around and there's lots of space and that sort of thing. And then we're going to go ahead and add in the fairway. So I want a little bit of the sort of fairway grass around the green, just where it's slightly longer, but not as well manicured and maintained as the green area, which I think, from my understanding and my research, is pretty common in golf courses. Again, I would reiterate with this entire build, I am not a golfer, so if you guys have suggestions for improvements, please do let me know in the comments below. Okay, and then what we can do is I'm going to leave a bit of a gap, as is fairly common, I think, for golf courses. And we're going to start the main fairway out from this point. And I think we're going to have some sort of lake in here as well. So I'm just going to sort of curve this round where a bunker or something like that might be. And we're going to extend it on out this way. So this is going to be a slightly kind of curvy hole. Nice and long, and we'll keep the fairway fairly narrow. Make it a little bit more tricky for those golfers on that final hole. So something along those lines is what I was thinking. And then we obviously want to have some tee greens as well, and I want to put some rough around the fairway too. So there's going to be, for every single hole, there's going to be a lot of this. A lot of surface action. It was line till last time, now it's surfaces. So I am just going to smooth out a little area around about here, and we're going to have some bunkers and things along the edges, and I'd like something in between where the tee off points are. And I would like these to be at an angle to make it a bit more tricky. So for the tees, I think we'll definitely use some of Sully's manicured grass sections. And we're just going to add in some very simple boxes, like so. And we want a couple to represent different levels of difficulty here, particularly on the last hole. We'll make it so that the third hole is more sort of curved around. And if we have some bunkers and things like that in the way, I think that's going to be a reasonably challenging, what I would like to call probably par 5 hole. So for the bunkers, I'm actually going to use this rocky sand texture, which is just the basic one, which I think just looks a little bit more realistic than some of the other sand textures. So for instance, I definitely want to have one in here. So I'm going to put that right up against the fairway there. And we'll probably have another sort of smaller one. Make it somewhat of an interesting shape. And then, like I said here, I'm thinking I'm going to have a water trap. So what I'm actually going to do is put in a small, very, very thin bunker around this side. Like that. And then we're going to come in and use some of our water mirror surfaces to create a little pond area, and we can put some rocks and some decorative elements around it. But we'll have a water trap in here too, just to add to that level of difficulty with this hole. So something like that. A lot of detail, a lot of detailing to be done around that, but that sort of works. I also quite like here that the tees are slightly lower down than the actual fairway itself. And what we can do is we can smooth this off so that there is a slight slope to the fairway here. And so it's not perfectly flat. A lot of the holes are going to be slopey in nature just because of where we are on the hill. But I think we'll make the final hole relatively flat just with that tiny slope at the beginning and the fact that you're teeing off actually slightly lower down than where the final green is. So that's one hole of 18, and now I'm actually looking at it as well, I'm realising it's definitely a par 3, isn't it? The pros would tee off from here onto the fairway, onto the green and into the hole maybe. That's probably how it actually is. So I'm going to have to consider that, because a par 5 hole is going to end up being extremely large or very curvy, which we can absolutely do in this space. But I think we are probably going to fill almost all of this space with holes, because it's not going to be the type of golf course where they're really closely packed in. It is going to be quite spread out just because of the nature of the landscape that we're working with here. But the overall plan is the first hole will start somewhere around about here. Then we'll do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the 9th hole will finish round about here. So that if you just wanted to do 9 holes, you could easily get back to the clubhouse and you're not too far away. And then holes 10 through to 17 will continue on around this side, ending up obviously at the 18th hole here. So when we're doing that, we always want to make sure that the tee greens, or the places where they tee off from at least, are close to the green of the previous hole, so that you're not walking for absolutely miles to get round the course if you choose not to use a golf buggy. So I think with that, we're going to lay out all of the surfaces for the holes in a time lapse, and I'm going to skip through parts of it so that you're not endlessly seeing me placing in lots of tiny surfaces. And then we'll come back after that and I'll walk you through all of the holes before we talk about how we're going to finish up the country club and what we're actually going to do to make this look realistic and detail the place. So that 3-minute segment that you just watched there took me 3 hours of real life time, if you want to kind of get a grasp on how long this actually took to lay down just these holes, and we haven't even detailed yet, but there we go. So let's have a little tour around, shall we? So we have got hole number 1 over here, and I've used the sort of rough surface. Some of the outsides are a bit jaggedy, so I do need to come in and tidy that up. I had angle snap on the surfaces for the first couple of holes, which really did not help the situation. You can see our sand trap there is a bit jaggedy, so a little bit of tidying up to do. But this is hole 1. Nice, simple, probably par 2 actually for the professionals. I tried to make it so that the pro tee point was a little bit more curvy. And they've obviously got this sand trap on the left-hand side, but it's an uphill one as well, which does make it a little bit more challenging. And we come up to the green right at the top point here. And I think the views from the green at hole 1 are absolutely splendid. Little sand trap there. And then we come down the hill here to hole 2, and I've used the little numbers to number them so that I can remember where the hell I'm going as well. And again, we've got the pro hole here where the green is actually hidden from view, which makes it a little bit more challenging. But again, this is probably only a par 3. Maybe a par 4 actually, because I'd have to tee off onto this green, which has the sand trap, and this also slopes, as you can see, down to the right. We've got a central sand trap, and then the fairway continues after that up to the green up here. So this is a much longer hole, a bit more challenging definitely than hole 1, which is there to lull you into a false sense of security, shall we say. And then a different view, so we come onto hole 3 where you actually tee off at a higher level than the fairway. So again, I would say this is probably par 3, maybe par 4. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but the fairway here slopes down. We have these sand traps here on either side to make it a little bit more challenging. Again, sloping down towards the green at the bottom here, and a little sand trap in front of that again, just to add a little bit of extra challenge. Then hole 4, we have a water trap as well at the front, and again this is another right hand curved one, but probably not too challenging for the pros there, onto a really large green. Again, right at the top of the hill, so if you go a little bit too far, your ball is gone into what probably will be forest eventually anyway. Then coming on to hole 5, so you're teeing off lower than the fairway here, and you cannot see the green at all as you come round this huge right hand bend. And I also decided to make this a bit more tricky here, where you've got quite a sharp turn. I'm thinking I'm going to fill it with trees here again to hide the green. So that would add an extra layer of difficulty in as you come around to the green here, which is very sharp on that corner. Again, some tidying up to do. And then hole 6, where we have a water trap and a sand trap before you get to the fairway, which has this sand trap right in the middle of it, and then a very small green at the end. So a small hole, this one. And this has definitely got the potential for a hole-in-one, I would say. Out of all of the holes, that's probably the easiest there for a hole-in-one opportunity at least. And then hole 7, again, different height to the fairway. It's sloping up, so your ball's going to roll back down towards you, and we're going to come around a curve to the green at this point. And then we come on to hole 8, which is another uphill one. We've got this large part of fairway, so that's where you'd be aiming to. And then we have this, what will be a detailed cliff gap in between the fairway and the green at that point. And then hole 9, so the first 9 being finished here, is a left-hander as we come uphill towards a nice big green at the end here. And this is also really convenient as well, because if you just wanted to do the first 9 or the second 9, back 9, I'm not sure if there's a term for it, you can start that here. So you've got obviously hole 1 starts here, or hole 10 starts at this point. So you've got options there. Nice and easy access from the main clubhouse itself. So yeah, hole 10 is a long one, but probably only a par 3 really. The fairway slopes down hills. We come towards a sand trap just before the green. And then we've got hole 11, which is probably my favourite here. So the pros tee off from a slightly higher level. We've only got 2 tee points from this than the noobs. I don't know if there's a term for that. But you do have to tee off over this cliff. So the path's going to come around this side. And we've got this lake pond underneath the cliff with a sand trap, very sharp slope down, as again we come towards another water trap before the green here, so lots of opportunities to lose your ball at that point, I would suggest. And then hole 12 comes up the hill, the double sand trap on either side, up to the green up the top. Hole 13 is a downhill one, and you risk kind of your ball running into this sand trap if you knock it a bit too far, I'd say there. Then we come onto the green, and there's this sharp runoff towards the green right at the end of the fairway, so again that adds another extra layer of difficulty. And then coming on to hole 14, nice and straight this one, nice and simple as we come up towards the green, but the green slopes in this case. on the right hand side, as you can see there. So you're going to need a nice accurate shot if you wanted to get that hole in one. I guess there's potential there if someone can hit that far. And then hole 15, we're coming back uphill, so lots of undulations in the terrain, which hopefully makes it a bit more interesting. I mean, I would find it impossible to do this course. Hole 16 is a really narrow fairway as we come up around the corner, and I'm thinking this one will definitely be surrounded by trees as well, which will make it a little bit more tricky. The pros hole as well, so if you can imagine there's going to be trees to the sort of southern side of that sand trap there. The pros hole is not going to have visibility of the green from the hole either here, which adds a little extra layer to it. So then hole 17, this is a huge right-hander. So you're coming down towards the sand trap here, off to the right and up to the hole with the double sand trap on it as well, this side. And that finishes us up at hole 18, which you already saw. So yeah, there we go. That is the course. It kind of flows together quite well. The holes aren't super, or the fairways at least aren't super packed in and close together. So we've got a lot of tree work to do and lots of paths. So we're going to be running paths all the way across the course, around the fairways, between each hole, so that the golfers can easily drive their little golf buggies around the site. I am actually thinking as well, we might use the small pedestrian street for this because it is one way, but we can make it so that it sort of flows around the first 9 and the back 9 in one direction, which, like, obviously no one's really going to come out here, but it also gives us the opportunity to add some of our little tiny 1x1 parks in, which might eventually, if the attractiveness can come up, encourage people to actually start walking around this site. Again, really hoping for some sort of park life DLC that will make that entirely possible, because the area tools don't really work that well from my experience to really get a lot of people in. So before we come on to detailing, which I feel like I've done a lot with all these surfaces, but obviously it's absolutely nothing compared to what needs to be done on this course, I do just want to talk about a few more little leisure facilities and things like that outside the back of the country house. So I've mentioned I did want tennis courts in here, which I think would be a really nice addition. I don't know what it's snapping to there. That's slightly weird. But I am actually thinking we'll probably put it in this position. So that works out quite nicely. I do just want to move it forward just a tiny touch, probably to about that point, just so it's not interfering with the driving range too much. And I hate the orange colour, but there's not a huge amount we can do with that other than putting decals in. And I'd really like to have the actual park here as opposed to just the tennis court decals. So I think that that will work. And then we also haven't placed one of these, but a community pool I think would be a really nice thing to have in here too, just for those country club members. And I am wondering what the best position would be for this, because I feel like some nice views out from the pool would be a good thing. So I'm actually thinking somewhere kind of almost down the hill over here, but it's whether we can get it to sit nicely in the terrain and make sense and not look really odd and stand out-ish. I feel like this could be quite nice. You've got that view over the vineyard and then into the main downtown in the background there. Obviously we have a high wall here, which we'll probably try and get rid of if we can. And then you've got a nice view up to Oregon Point and down to Atkinson. Can you see? You can't really see the lake from here, but you can see across the city that way. So I feel like this would be quite a nice little secluded place just away from the main country house. And I think we'll actually grab a gravel road for this, because then we can cover it up nicely with some surfaces. Yeah, so that'll bring them down nicely to the pool area there. We'll cover that up and make that a little bit smarter. And we want to do a similar thing here as well. So we'll just bring a gravel track across along the back here, and then that can probably go into the pathway system, the pedestrian road system that will run around the actual site. And then for parking, we're going to use some of our parking lot roads for this, which I think is always the nicest thing to do here. And we're going to bring out 2 kind of prongs of car parks along here. Yeah, so like that. So they're relatively equal. We've got a bit of green in between to do some nice decorations around there too. And then we can certainly bring out another segment over here towards the driving range. And then I am thinking as well with this road, we're going to use some of Dome's car parks on it. The diagonal ones I think would be quite nice, although they are facing the wrong way. Yes, they are. Okay, so normal car parks it is. And we'll have some of these along this road here that can almost be kind of exclusive VIP car parking or something like that. Or the ones closest at least to the club, so they're the spots that you want to grab when you first come in. I don't think we want any more than that. That's a fair few, at least for a golf club. Well, a golf country club, at least. Now I do also want to put a putting green on here, as I mentioned, which I think is going to go out in this space over here. So we'll sort of level off an area and have a small putting green in here as well as part of the detailing. But there is an absolute mammoth amount to do to tidy this up and finish off. So hold on to your hats. It's going to be a long one. And that is our absolutely massive 18-hole golf course complete. And I do actually really like the aesthetic of it on this hillside. You can kind of see from certain angles just how undulating it is, which I really, really enjoy. Like, some of these holes are going to be quite difficult. I've no idea if that's realistic or not, but it looks kind of good from an aesthetic point of view, for me at least. So yeah, let's just go around. First off, I do just want to shout out Stephen Van Vuren, who on the last episode mentioned that the vineyard should have a wedding venue. And this made me think, actually, with a golf course, we should probably have a wedding venue here too. So thank you for that comment, because here we go. We've got a little wedding venue in the middle of our golf course, just up on the hillside over here, overlooking hole 11, is that? Yes. And also hole 12? Yes, over here too. So I thought this was quite a nice little spot for a garden wedding venue, and there's enough space around to add a marquee if they wanted to as well, to keep the entire wedding at this point in the golf course. But yeah, there we go. So, I don't even know where to begin. I've already walked you through the holes, so I'm not going to do that again, but we have added in the one-way pedestrian road in here, but it is actually getting use as well. But so, in a few different places, I've added in these little, well, this is a 2x1 park area and some of the 1x1 parks, just to create a bit of a viewing platform over this hole here. Hole 3 is that, I think? But that does mean that hopefully eventually someone will come down here, but we have had park maintenance vehicles and things like that driving around here, which is cool to see. There's something coming. There we go. There's one right now. So the whole one-way system does work. It all loops up and meets up at this point in the middle here, but you can't really tell that it's one way. It just looks like big fancy pedestrian paths. And then in amongst that as well, we do just have regular pedestrian paths for some of the bits so they can walk around the holes a little bit more easily. Yeah, I'm really loving this aesthetic. Yeah, it was a lot of very strategic tree placement I would add around. I've also added in, I mean, I know it's like a smart car, but it's the best I could do towards a golf buggy. Maybe we'll get some golf buggy assets further down the line, but there we go. We've dotted in a few of those around different holes, so like people have pulled up and ready to shoot, hit, play, whatever you say with golf. Yeah, I've done a little bit of decorating around some of the water areas. This little lake in the middle, actually, I forgot to mention before as well. So we've got that there again with a couple of those park assets next to it. A nice little place to sit. We've got some benches up on the hillside over here as well, so you can look down over the pond if you wanted to. And then this little gap. So I can't remember which hole this was now. 8. As you come up the hill and then you've got this gap, we've just decorated that with a view of Sully's riverbed decals in here before you get to the green over that side. So I think it's kind of, it's working pretty nicely. It is a parkland style course, obviously, with this amount of trees in it. But there's nothing really kind of blocking the holes. There's a few holes where I've strategically made the trees make it a little bit more difficult, like here, where we designed the fairway to be that case, so the trees actually block your view from the green. Coming up to the top here. Same with this one, for instance, like the pros tee-off point is round here. So it's downhill, you can't see the green, and there's trees somewhat in the way, and then a little bit easier for the rookies tee point there. Yeah. That was the main features, the little wedding venue, a couple of those water features, and then it really is just benches and trees and nice strategic path placement. Obviously around the 18th hole I've tried to keep it as open as possible, so we've got the big pedestrian paths running all the way along either side, a little bit open into the driving range here as well, which I thought was quite nice. And then we come up to the final green, and we've added in a little park at the back of the country clubhouse here, which leads into it, which we have got some homeless in, of course, with their barrel fire as well. Very appropriate for the area. Love that, love that. I did use one of the Chinese asset pack sculptures, I guess you could call it, this archway, just to signify the entrance into the golf course, which I love, love, love. I did also use some of those in the wedding venue as well, these little sculptures at the back here, these little blue ones. I thought they kind of looked like two people twisting together, so appropriate for a wedding venue, maybe. And then of course we have got the putting green over here as well, so just nice and square. We've used some of the curb edging around it, a pathway around it as well to frame it, a little walled area so it's nicely enclosed and your balls aren't going to fly off anywhere, not that they should on a putting green. But there we go, it kind of almost looks like it could be bowls as well, potentially, so maybe it could be multi-purpose. We've of course got the swimming pool down here. I annoyingly cannot delete the walls, so we've just left it as is, and they'll just have to suffer not having very nice views down there. And then if we come onto the country club, so I mean just some strategic flower placement really here and a bit of surface work. So we've got a nice path running all the way along the outside. We then have this with an invisible road tracking between that and the tennis court out the back, with an expanded restaurant area out here with parasols, a few more tables, and then a few more chairs around in the back corner as well. And then some planters around it, obviously, to frame off the little restaurant area at the back of the country club there. Then we come onto the car park, pretty simple, just some hedging. I didn't think it needed too much more than that. And we got some nice flowers outside the front of the country club. And if we come onto the sort of service, staff, maintenance, guest services area, maybe, something like that, we have got a couple of parks again out here. So I've really tried to ram in the very small parks in the hope that people will actually come up here. We've had quite a few people actually visiting these commercial units and the offices of the driving range as well, and also the hotels. If I just show you quickly before I forget, we have got 25 rented rooms in this one, none in this one, but it's working, it's attractive, it's bringing people up to the area. As you can see, there are cars in the car park and that sort of thing, so I think it's okay. But then, yeah, out the back here, we've got this little gated area as you come into the staff area with a few bins, some trucks for them to drive round the course to maintain it, and then a load of what we're going to call golf buggies sat at the back here. So yeah, I think that kind of works quite nicely, really, as a guest services area. And then if we come on back to the driving range, we just prettied this up a little bit at the front, nothing major there. Look, we have actually got people waiting at the driving range, how wonderful. And if we come on out the back, I've just done some wall decorations with some covers for the little T points before they can get out into the driving range. And I did not manage to find anything that was suitable for the distance markers, so we've just got those fences, which hopefully we can use our imagination a little bit and it works. But yeah, I think it sits in pretty well. I'm pleased with how the covers look on the back of the driving range. It feels kind of like an appropriate building, I think, for that. But that was it, actually. So it wasn't as complex as I originally thought. It was just a lot of time pacing some very strategic trees by hand to make sure we had the vibe of this parkland golf course that I wanted. But yeah, very, very pleased with it. There's some really nice views out over Philadelphia as well. If we come down to here, you can see we can look out over Atkinson, Oregon Point, Gaudy Bay, onto Few Haven. Yeah, really, really liking the fact that we've done this on hilly terrain, because it does add another dynamic to the golf course for sure, having all of these different layers and levels to it. When you come down to ground level, it feels really quite interesting, natural and nice, hopefully. And so for today, that is going to be it. If you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. Keep those suggestions coming for what else you want to see in Philadelphia. We have a lot of land to fill, so we need a lot of suggestions in order to get in some really cool, unique builds. But that is all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye!